Okay everybody, let's talk about the menu system, which is just lovely and popped up there. The menu system improvements that I've made to this sandbox. Now, those of you who are familiar with mission scripting, you'll know there's the FGM key pressed logic, I guess, that you can use to make sure that you can push keys and things will happen. And that's all well and good. And I've used that and kind of built upon that to make a bit more of a robust menu system. And so I'm just going to walk you through that now. So first and foremost, let's have a quick look at just a menu. When I push N, for instance, it pops up like this. And if you're using the menu system, try and keep this window open. It will go away occasionally, but if you push the X button there, it takes ages to come back. So just leave this window open as best you can. And you can see that I'm pushing buttons and we're just cycling now through pages of a menu. So we have a menu system that has pages, and now if I want to do something, we have a menu system that allows us to have multiple inputs. So I'm just spawning a few different ships, and you can see that the menu isn't closing as I do it. It's just sitting there waiting for more input. And this is an improvement on the previous menu system, which cancelled out every single time you went to do something. So if you wanted to spawn multiple ships, you would have to open the menu and then spawn a ship, and then open the menu and spawn a ship and open the menu. You get the point. It got really annoying. And so here we have 3 different ships. And if I wanted to spawn a ship with a code, you can see it's taking me to something else, giving me a prompt. I'm just going to push 0 for random. Press space. Creating ship there gives me a little bit of a message, and then it brings me straight back to the menu. And sadly, this message just kind of messed up the menu because I have a ship here that's got no hail state set for itself. But that's okay. But the point is, when I spawn something, it comes back to the menu that I was looking at. So if I spawn a USN ship, it does have a hail state. So a little message to tell me what I'm doing, and then we're back to that menu again, ready to do something else. Very useful. Alright, so pages and multiple inputs. Now let's go to something like this menu. We have menus in here that, if they have little arrows next to them, despite having a name on this one anyway that is very obvious, but if we have a menu that has arrows on the side of it, like this as well, you can push the same button again to take you to a different page. The N menu is the only exception. I should really put arrows on it, but it has the same functionality that allows you to go through 4 pages in this instance. And so we have it on the environment menu as well. And so this allows us to have much more options in the same key, under the same key, without running out of keys and without mixing things up. So environment, if I want all of the environment stuff to be under the E key, but I have 16 environment things that I want to do, then I'm going to run out of keys that make sense to be in your mind as the environment keys, you know. So pages, like that, very useful. And we also have the ability to go backwards. Excuse me. We also have the ability to go backwards in a menu. So previously, if you went into a menu and it made a mistake, say I'm in the wormhole menu now and I want to set location, and I press wormhole 2 and go, no, it's wormhole 1 I want to set. I do not need to fret. I can just press the Z key and it will take me back to where I was. 1 and then Z, and then, you know, if I'm in the middle of putting input in here, so I'm selecting a system, I go, okay, it's the blank system. And oh wait, no, it's not the blank system. I can just press back and it'll take me back to the wormhole select again. So it's a lot easier to use, and when I use it, I just keep my hand in a very familiar WSAD kind of shift and space position. My hand just sort of draped over the keyboard, and that way I have access to all the number keys easily, and I have access to that Z key, so I can just go 2, no, not 2, 1, and then continue with what I was doing. And having a bit of fun, sector and the position. And then once I'm here, I'm back to that. I've done all that. I'm back to the wormhole select again. So I'm just going to go back 1 layer and toggle wormholes, and we'll see a wormhole open because I'm in sector 00. Yeah, you can see I've also added the set to this sector. So if I go to a different sector just for fun, let's go to sector 09 or 90, whatever, and then just using the wormhole menu there. Wormhole, set to this sector. It'll give me 1 prompt for the position, and then boom, like that. Very cool. Alright, anyway, so you can see now that we can go back through pages. As always, if you're in a menu, in any menu, as soon as you press another menu key, like I'm in the E menu, I press M, it goes straight to it. Even if I'm deep, like in the M menu, if I press M, it'll take me right back to the root, or change page depending on the setting up. Other things about the menu. Of course, you can just press the 0 key, it'll take you right back to the roots. And if you really... I might actually take the 0 key, taking you back to the root, out of it, because you can do things like this. You can be in a menu and like really deep in the menu, and then just press Z a bunch of times, you'll be back at the root as well. So it seems a little redundant, but I might leave it there. Anyway, so that's the extent of the menu system. It remembers where you are and obviously allows you to back up through the menus. Now let's talk a little bit about the code, the way it works. And with that, we got the diagnostic window on the left, which shows you a bunch of things in the testing space there. Now, everything from top menu selection all the way down to submenu 3 selection, just before pick class. These are all the variables that are used in the menu. Apart from Q root menu, that's just to illustrate something. So actually, let's illustrate that first. I press Q there. I've just pressed Q, brings up the sector select, and you can see now that top menu selection is 16, and Q root 0. Sorry, I'm mixing things up. Q root menu is 0. So if I push Q again, essentially what that variable is telling an event is that I am not going to the Q root menu when I push Q. I am instead going to a different thing. Now I'm at the end of the tree of pages, and you can see that I'm on menu page 2 now, below that. Now I'm at the end of expected pages for this menu. So if I push Q again, I will go back to the root. If I had N root menu up there, you would see that when I push N, it would say N root menu 0 because I'm in the root of the menu. And then as I cycle through, it would still be 0, it would still be 0 until I push to Sarma. Sarma is the last page, and you can see I'm on menu page 4. It's expecting 4 pages, and at this point, if I push N again, it would take me back to the beginning, and that's because N root menu would equal 1. So we have below that as well the layers. So as I go through a menu, if I go into the wormhole menu again, right now I'm on the base level of the menu. I'm on the second page, but I'm still on the base of the menu. I haven't gone into anything yet. And now if I go into wormhole, you can see I'm on layer 1. And with that, my selection of 3 has been stored. Submenu 1 selection is stored. So it knows that I'm in option 3 of the base of the menu, and now I'm in layer 1. Now if I pick 2, I'm in layer 1, it's going to increment it to 2, and I've stored 2 as my input in submenu selection 2. And now if I pick... Say I pick an option that doesn't exist. I pick 3. You can see now that it goes to update the menu. Update menu there gets set to 1, and then it realizes that it's not being resolved. It takes maybe like a quarter of a second, but it realizes that the menu isn't being resolved, and so I'm at a dead end. And so there's a safety mechanism here. If you put an input in that's not being used, or not being waited for, it'll just kick you back out to your menu. So it's not going to break the menu. Anyway, until I pick an option which is meant to be used, and it'll store it, and it'll increment the layer. And now I'm in selecting a system for wormhole 2. And I can just back out, and as I press Z, you can see that it forgets where I was and decrements the layer. And it forgets where I was again, decrements the layer. It forgets where I was again, decrements the layer. And now that I'm in layer 0, if I press it once again, it'll clear the top menu. So I'm back to the root. And it's still looking for input here. I actually should clear that off as well. If I push a number, that's very interesting to me. Oh well, cool. That get menu input variable is the variable that controls the numbers, the number of options in your menu that you're looking for. So yeah, it's a little bit interesting to me that it stays on. I shall clear that when I need to. Anyway, so that's all the variables in the diagnostic, so you can see what's going on in the menu. Let's go down to the actual code and have a look at it. Menu system. I think end of menu system. Good stuff. Let's go up a little bit. Start of the menu system. Alright, so I've started the process pretty much completed the process actually of every utility that's within the script, labeling it and giving a list of requirements. The menu system requires the clock, and we've talked about the clock. And it also has some recommended stuff. The improved input for like multiple number inputs rather than just one number at a time, and the basic menu functions which are at the bottom of this. I'll show you in a second. Alright, so here we have a delay timer. Essentially it just waits for the 6 tick state and then sets, if your delay timer is set to 1, sets it to 2. And this is my way of making sure that double key inputs don't happen, because the buffer that listens for key inputs sometimes keeps the key input around for a little bit longer than it should, and you end up getting like, say you've got a menu that say you push the E menu. It's not designed the way I've designed it. Say you push the E menu and the first option is create grass. I don't know. Create grass, and then in that is a menu that's like, number 1 is the length, number 2 is the color of whatever. So you've pushed 1 to get into create grass. The double key push would immediately take you into the length, and you wouldn't have an option. You wouldn't have the chance to choose a different option. And so this essentially just makes sure that the buffer for key input is clear before we expect another input. And then moving down, we have the dead end sensor. So previously you saw that if I picked an option that wasn't being waited for, it would set update menu to 1. So it's checking if all these things, checking if the dead end sensor is not being used, and it's checking if update menu is 1, and 6 tick state has happened. If that's the case, then we're gonna wait until 6 tick state is off, and then we're gonna wait until it goes back on again. So an entire quarter, an entire fourth, actually, this shouldn't be called 6 as we've talked about in the clock, but an entire fourth has passed, and if it still equals 1, then we set it to 0 and we back up the menu because we're in the wrong place, quite clearly. It's like, you know, you've walked into an alley, you stand around for a while and assess whether you're in the right place, and if you're not, you walk back out. And then the dead end sensor gets set to 0. If however this all begins to happen, menu dead end sensor gets set to something other than 0, but update menu gets set by some other event, like a menu that is waiting to update, then this will get triggered. This is the reset. I should really just put reset next to this so I can see it. Alright. So menu dead end sensor is greater than 0, as in it's on in some way. I should take that hint away because it's not for it. Then and menu update equals 0, as in it's been updated by something else, then we set menu dead end sensor to 0, because we shouldn't be caring about dead ends at this point. Okay, so that's the safety stuff. Now we have the input sensors. So if we're in a menu, as in the top menu selection is not 0, it has a number of some kind, and if you remember rightly when we were going through the menus, each menu sets that to a different number. So you can see 3, 15, 4, as long as it's not 0, we are in a menu of some kind. And so if we're not disabling menu input, which is an option you can do and gets used quite often in fact, if you're not in a menu, and sorry, if you are in a menu, what am I talking about? If you are in a menu, if it's not 0, and the layer of that menu is 0, as in we're at the base layer of the menu, and we're not updating a menu at this point, but get menu input is greater than or equal to 1. Now, get menu input is the way that you sort of restrict what options you're listening for. It's not technically necessary now because of this safety thing here, but I've just left it in for good practice. Get menu input here, you can see we've got a menu that builds itself. First option is set waypoint, second one is set shift speed, all the way through to toggle surrender, which is number 7. So I set get menu input at the end of this being displayed to the user. I set get menu input to 7, and that means that this will now wait for an input, and it's expecting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. If I set this to 4, then I wouldn't be able to use 5, 6, or 7, because when I get to, like, you know, 3 is great, like, sorry, 4 in fact is greater than or equal to 3, 4 is greater than or equal to 4, but it's not greater than or equal to 5. So 5 wouldn't work, 6 wouldn't work, and so it wouldn't get stored with that input. Alright, back to 7 with that one. And so you can see the workflow here. Once we check that we're in the right layer and update menu is not there, and we have, get menu input is expecting 1 as an input, at least, then we check whether delay timer state is 2, which is obviously that delay back up here to make sure double key presses don't happen. And if it is 2, then we set it back to 1, which will give it another time to delay. And then we also, because we're on layer 0, we need to set the menu submenu selection that we've just chosen into memory. So if we're on layer 0, the menu selection we now make on layer 0 will be for whatever submenu we're going into on layer 1. So submenu 1 selection equals 1, or 2 if you push 2, or 3 if you push 3, and then after that it increments the layer, which you've seen again in the diagnostic window. Increments the layer to make sure that the menu system knows that you're now expecting layer 2 to pop up, or layer 1 in fact, because layer 0 is the base. And then it tells update menu to happen. So update menu here, you can see that all of this is expecting a certain state. If top menu selection is 25, menu page is 1, which is the normal sort of base page, menu layer is 0, and we're not resetting anything, and update menu is 1. If update menu is 0, then obviously this doesn't update. So you want to make sure that when you're in a menu, once it's been shown to your user, the menu doesn't keep trying to show itself to the user and waste cycles. So that's what that's for. And it sets it to 0 to make sure it doesn't happen again. And then we also set get menu input to 0. Alright, so that's for one layer. So you remember that being for menu layer 0. If we're in menu layer 1, which is now the layer we would be in if we just put input in at the base layer, then we are going to set submenu selection 2, or submenu 2 selection rather, to whatever number we input, and so storing that second input. And the same for 3. If we're now in menu layer 2, we set whatever we push into submenu 3 selection, and increment the layer once again. So very simple stuff. And now we have the backups. Now you'll notice that when we were going through all the safety things at the top, or the redundancy rather, we had something called backup menu, and it's set to 1. What this does is it asks the menu system to go back 1 layer. Now you can ask the menu system to go back more than 1 layer if you really want to. I designed it in that way because I don't need it that way, but it could be used that way sometime in the future. So we have here backup menu delayed, I'll get back to in a sec, but backup menu. If backup menu is not 0, then someone is asking us to back up the menu. Whoever it is, obey them, of course. And then menu layer, we check the menu layer we're on. If we're on menu layer 3, then we need to delete what we had in stored for menu selection number 3, because we need to forget where we just were, otherwise it'll trigger that menu again. And then we need to decrement the layer, because we're backing up. So if we're in menu layer 3, we end up in menu layer 2 and forgetting what we chose for menu layer 3, ready for a new choice. And then we post an update, because we're going to update the menu, of course, to get that menu displayed in front of the user. And then because backup menu equals 1, we would decrement it to equal 0, and it would no longer be greater. So it would actually be 0, so it would no longer be greater than 0, and thus not 0. And that would normally be the end of it. Once post update is set, you can see here we're waiting for backup menu to be 0, making sure we're not delaying it, and then setting the post, or if post update is 1, then we're resetting all the side menus and updating the menu. Now the resetting of the side menus is very important because there are a bunch of menus that don't use this menu system, or a bunch of functions rather that don't use a menu system. They get input in other ways, and so I need to make sure that if I'm in any one of those, that me backing out doesn't leave that menu system listening for input. So that's why all the set side menu stuff happens. Side menu reset happens, and I'll show you that in a sec when we get to the bottom. Okay, so what if backup menu is multiple numbers? Like if it, not multiple numbers, sorry, a greater number than 1. Say it's 2, and we're in layer 3. Then we would forget what we had in layer 3, and then decrement to layer 2. And then we would be here with backup menu still equaling more than 0, or not 0. So we're in layer 2 now. We forget what we had in layer 2, and decrement the layer, and then we would actually have we would also decrement backup menu, and then backup menu would equal 0, so we wouldn't back up any further. So we'd now be in layer 1. If you went too far, if you were saying layer 1 and you tried to back up 3 layers, that's totally accommodated for as well. It forgets first of all what you had in the first one, backs up, and sets it to update, and then backs up the menu entirely. It'll decrements what you had to back up. So now we've got 2. We've got 2 left to back up, and here if we're in menu layer 0 and we're asking to back up, then all it does is clear the console and reset the console entirely. So nothing. That's how it forgets what base menu it's in, and at that point it would decrement the backup and still have 1 left. So it would just do this again. Very, very simple stuff. Continuing through with the post updates. Oh no, it's delay now. So yeah, that's how the main backup works, and it's you can add whatever number you want into it, and it'll just keep cycling until it gets down to 0, and you'll end up in the right place. Now if we delay, now the backup delay is used to great effect to give feedback to the input that you do. If we set backup menu delayed to greater than 0, like say we set it to 1, then all we'd be doing is waiting to make sure we're not already backing up, and then setting backup menu to what we've put into backup menu delay. So we're just piggybacking on all this stuff that I've just explained, which is fine. But after that, we set backup menu delayed to -1, and that's because later on it's listening to see if backup menu delayed is 0, and if it's not 0, which -1 is not 0, then it will delay the actual update of the menu, giving the user time to read what the message would be. So giving you an example, let's create a ship and give him a waypoint. So S is the ship control menu. We have set waypoint there. As soon as I push it, set waypoint, or waypoint set pops up to tell you that you've just set a waypoint. That is the delayed backup. To compare that to the non-delayed backup, I'm in a menu, I push Z, that's a non-delayed backup. It just happens immediately. Obviously, it's kind of, I'm sure, patronizing perhaps to say that sort of stuff, but it is what it is. And the way it works, by setting that to -1, it's no longer 0. So if it equals 0, we just do a regular post. If it doesn't equal 0, then we are waiting for a half tick state. And then we're setting backup delay state to 1. And then we're waiting for the half tick state to go off, and we're setting backup delay state to 2. And then we're waiting for another tick to come by. So we're at least getting half a second to read this message before we reset the side menu and update the menus again. So it just waits for half a second. And it's the same cycle structure that I showed you earlier on as well. And here's the clearing stuff. So we have clear console, which is giving you all that information. This never used to be here. It used to just be that. So I might keep it. It kind of looks okay. Might not though. And menu reset. Here we have reset GM console. If you remember way up the top, here we have clear GM console and reset GM console. So it just makes it blank, or gives you the root message, and it just forgets whatever you had in the menu because you're about to do something completely different, apparently. And if that's the case, then we check to see whether we're resetting the console submenus. If we're not, then we reset the menu page and the top selection. But we haven't forgotten everything about the menu system, so we have to reset submenus as well. So now we forget everything about the layer of submenus, but we haven't forgotten everything about the side menus now. So we set that off, and we forget everything about side menus, and then reset every single one of those variables. So this can be used at any level. You can either just reset the side menus, you can reset both the side menus and the sub menus, or you can reset all of them, which is kind of nice. And now we're at the end of the menu system. Now previously, at the beginning of the menu system, there was a requirements section, and it said recommended basic menu functions and improved input as well. These are the basic menu functions. 0 for manually resetting the menu. You can see it's also force halts a few things. It does resets for the ship creator, the fleet creator, and the station creator. I might actually make the 0 key that force halt key, if you like, which the way that would be used, if you're jumped into a sector and you want to stop ships from spawning, because maybe you don't want ships to spawn, but they're trying to spawn, you would just force halt everything. And at the bottom of this, you can see it resets the console and clears the console. And then there's my backup. So every time I push Z, you can see that all it does is set the side menus to reset and backs up the menu. Now that is actually redundant now, isn't it? Because when we back up the menu... Oh no, it's not redundant at all. Because if I back up the menu, I am gonna... Oh no, it is redundant. There it is. Totally redundant. I don't need that in there anymore to reset things. So I think that was just when I was building it initially. Cool. And let's be absolutely sure, by using a side menu and then backing out. So N6 for ship, and now I'm going to put a few numbers in. I'm going to put 2522, so that should be a USN scrapper, and then I'm going to back out and then press space, and that shouldn't spawn a ship. It didn't spawn a ship. Cool. That makes me happy. Makes me know that it's working. If I push 6 again, then press space, it's clear. That's cool. 2522 again, and then press space. We're all good. All right, nice. So that is absolutely not needed there. Not needed at all. So yeah, when I push Z, all it does is back up the menu and goes through all that rigmarole you just saw. If I push the spacebar, delete stuff. So you want to be able to back up the menus. You want to be able to delete stuff. You want to be able to jump ships around, and you want to be able to. I would hope you would want to be able to move all of your player ships to one location. And there's also the Skybox one in there, which I need to actually rework. That's that could be better. Anyway. So that's all of the menu functions and the code behind the menu as it works. Now let's look at menu definitions. So I want to start with a menu like the N menu that's got multiple pages. Oh, I need to actually find it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is the N menu. I'm scrolling through it because we're not at the beginning of it yet. Keep going. Alright, cool. So first and foremost, if you remember rightly on the debug thing here, we have Q root menu. This, I mentioned there was something called N root menu. This is a check for whether we're going to be at the root of the N menu if we push N. So, if we're not at the, not going to the root menu essentially, then we need to check what menu page we're on. And if we're on 0 as a menu page, which means that we're not in a menu at all because page 1 is the base of a menu, then we are going to the root menu because we're not in a menu. Each one of these is just checking whether you're in the N menu and at the root already. And if that's not the case, then you are to set the root. Or you're going to the root if you push N. So if we're not in 4, if we're in any other menu, or we're just in a blank space, then we're definitely going to the root because as soon as we push N, we're not in the root menu, so we go to the root. That was not the best sentence ever, but hopefully you understand. And then here we have the page. If it's greater than 3, now there are 4 pages, as you saw. You have civilian, aura, USN, and Sarma. So civilian is page 1, and then going on page 2, page 3, and then when we get to Sarma, that's page 4, which is greater than 3, obviously. So that's the last page. So we want to make sure that if we push N again, we go back to the root, which is how this is controlled. So if you had a page system that had 7 pages in it, you would make sure that if it was greater than 6, or you could put greater equals to 7, it's up to you, then it would work for you. At page 6 it would recycle. So that's that, I suppose. If we're in a layer greater than 2, now I don't actually know why that is. Let's why is it 2? Let's have a look. Alright, so I'm a civilian. This is layer number 0. So as soon as I push anything, it's going to take me to layer 1 and then click me back. So that's never going to get triggered. That seems kind of pointless. I'm on layer 1 now doing this. And if I pushed N from here, it would take me to aura, and that's pretty bad. Okay, so that actually shouldn't be that. This should be, this check here should be greater than the maximum number of layers, or sorry, not even that. This should be, if you're not on the base layer, then you should be going back to the root, essentially. I feel like that's what it should be. So greater than 0. If I do that, now no matter what I do with that menu, when I reset it, now no matter what I do with that menu, if I'm not on the root, it will take me back to the root. So I'm going to go ahead and press the ship spawn, and now if I push N again, it'll take me back to, damn you aura, damn you. That's not the case. So let's see why that happens. Spawn ship, we're on menu layer 1, which is greater, so if I push N again, yeah, that's why it is. That's very weird. Menu layer greater than 0, then en route menu is 1. Something else must be setting it to 0. If menu page is less than 3, which yeah, absolutely is, and we're in the menu, yep, and layer is less than or equal to layer, there it is, that's what's doing it. As long as we are on the root menu, then we're good. So less than or equal to 1 is the wrong part. It is the error there. Let's see it happening once more. So now when I go into layer 1, I should now, if I push N, I expect to go back to civilian. No, I went to aura. Damn you! I did notice that the first time I pushed it, it didn't actually do anything. So, that's interesting. I'll have to sort that one out. Cool. Continuing on though, because I've wasted enough of your time with that. This now, every time you push N, this is one of the events that's listening for an N key press, and pretty much after all of this consideration, if N root menu eventually is 1, then we set everything to the root menu of the N menu. So top menu selection 4, page 1, and we update the menu. If it is not on, if we're not going to the root menu because we're already there, then we are just incrementing the menu page and updating the menu. Nice and simple. The info refresh is no longer used. I don't know why it's there. And here we have the menu structure. So an event to listen for the right state of where you are, so in this case just the base root menu and page 1 and layer 0, and to make sure we're not resetting the submenus. And then it makes sure that we're updating. If it's asking for a menu update, then this is listening for a menu update essentially, and it updates the menu, setting update menu to 0 so it doesn't do it again, and then it asks for input, and then when it asks for input, that chucks it over to this side, at which point it will listen for a key press, and if it gets the key press, it will try and interpret that, and if the interpretation leads it to a state where it can update a menu that gives you something, then it will give you something. If it doesn't, then it'll just back out using that safety mechanism at the top there. Yeah, this one. But here we are listening for 7. If we press 1, then submenu selection will equal 1. We'll be on layer 1 and we'll be on page 1. So we need to make sure that we're like looking for a menu update, and we're not creating a ship already. At this point, we create a ship and back up the menu. So all that happens is we're on this menu, we're looking at this, we come in here, do what we need to do and come back out. And then we might want to come in here and come back out. And so all the backup menus do is that. There are occasions where you won't want to back up the menu immediately, or you might want to leave it to something else to happen. So here we have an example of backup menu delayed. So for generating a ship, we have set off the manual ship spawn. And this is a menu that can be recalled from anywhere else. I could take this and put it in a totally different part of the script if I wanted to. But yeah, manual ship spawn gets set to 1. And if manual ship spawn gets set to 1 from anywhere, this will listen. And now we're making sure we're not creating a ship, giving them the menu, and waiting for this get input number. I think I've explained it before, but get input number allows the player to input more than just a single digit. And the 2 means that it's not waiting for you to see how long you hold the confirmation. The button, the space essentially to confirm, you can hold the button in some cases to do something different to your input. And then manual ship spawn gets set to 2. So we're no longer in the menu system, as you can see. It's not checking for top menu, side like the sub menu stuff, the layers or pages. It's just making sure that we're going through this menu system, and it's not doing anything to update the menu. So this, like, none of the regular menu system is getting triggered anymore. We're just going through this stuff. So if we are creating a ship, then it does this. If we're not creating a ship, it does this, gives you the menu. If we are creating a ship, then it gives you a message that says ship is already being spawned, and then backup menu delay, which allows you to read this for a bit before it actually delays you, before it actually backs you up in the menu system. And then if we get, by some miracle, to the menu's ship spawn equaling 2, which is done here after the input, then we set it to 0 because we're now at the end of the tree. We create a ship with your input number, which is the code that you would have put in, and as long as it's ready, of course. And then we reset the input numbers. We give you a little message to say we're creating a ship, which I would really like to have a capital C. And then we back up the menu, but we also delay it, and we're only backing up one stage, of course. So there's an example, like of a time that you wouldn't use a backup immediately. You would just, you know, delegate the backup to somewhere else, essentially. And then generate fleet, same sort of idea. We have a triggering of manual fleet spawn, and then the entire manual fleet spawn thing has a backup delay at the end. So now we have page 2. So it's kind of the same, it's just listing for a different page. As long as we're on page 2 here, everything is listing for page 2, and we have the same sort of backup things. This one's just listing for page 3, and so on and so forth. It's very, very easy to use now. I mean, I understand that to those who don't edit and don't do any mission making or anything, or even if you do, this might look a little daunting because it's not the usual structure you would expect to see. But when it all boils down to it, this is a very, very simple language, far simpler than it really should be, in my opinion. There's a lack of depth in the XML parser, which means a lot of tasks that you might want to do for the game are very, very hard. But the menu system works, and it helps to make the user experience, I think, of the GM Sandbox a little less clunky and much more varied as well. You can do loads of stuff with it now. But anyway, I think we talked enough about the menu system, and I have to get on to talking about other things for you as well. So I will see you in the next video, which I have no idea what it'll be. Have fun. Bye bye.